It may only be week 2 of the season, but after a physical win over the Broncos, the Seahawks are looking pretty banged up heading into what looks to be another physical showdown in Foxboro. We're going to be diving into a very long injury report here on our latest Matchup Wednesday installment of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on our latest Matchup Wednesday by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s that are listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week, whether you're in nearby Wenatchee, Washington, or down in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where the NFL just had an awesome game between the Eagles and the Packers last week. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are officially on to New England. The Seahawks preparing for the Patriots had their first practice today. Unfortunately, Rob, though, even though it's only week 2, this looked like an injury report that you would see in like week 12 or week 13. 7 players that were limited today, 4 players that were out. And unfortunately, we already know one of them that will not be playing in New England. Mike McDonald already declaring Uchenne out for this weekend. So we won't be on Nwosu watch for the rest of the week. But this is a team that's pretty darn banged up coming out of that game against the Broncos. And New England is a physical football team as well. Maybe this is just being cautious early in the week to make sure they have all their ducks in a row so they can be ready for this game on the road against the 1-0 Patriots.
Yeah, you hope so. Fingers crossed from a Seahawk perspective here. You know, as far as the players who did not participate today, that's going to be the star running back, Kenneth Walker, the tackle, George Fant, who we know went down with a knee injury in the week 1 victory over the Denver Broncos. You mentioned Uchenne Nwosu, who's already out, but Tyrell Dodson as well, the inside linebacker position. Those are players that did not participate in practice at all on Wednesday. Mike McDonald also said in his press conference that the Seahawks are going to be traveling on Friday, so to not be on the practice field on Wednesday is significant. Limited participation. That would be Tyler Lockett, the tight ends, Noah Fant, as well as Pharaoh Brown. Still, it's probably positive news that he was at least a limited participant. You know, Pharaoh Brown wants to, exact a little bit of revenge on his former New England Patriot teammates, but another veteran linebacker in Jerome Baker. So again, that's going to be one of the real interesting things here the Seahawks have to face, as well as Dre'Mont Jones and the cornerbacks Reek Woolen and Trey Brown. So as you said, Corbin, this is a long injury list. I think that it's a reflection of 2 things. As you said, it was a physical game against the Denver Broncos. This is the highly physical squad that they are going to be facing in the New England Patriots, the 1-0 New England Patriots. And of course, it's a big, long travel all the way to Foxborough. I think all of those things are factors here. I do expect the Seattle to be relatively healthy, relatively ready to play, similar to what we saw with Tyler Lockett, who of course didn't practice a lot and then wound up getting the game ball as the closer for the Seahawks in their victory. But still, there are a number of injuries that bear watching as we get a little bit closer to the game against the Patriots.
So I'm going to play the glass half full card for this injury report because most of the players that are listed here, we already knew that they have been dealing with minor injuries. Noah Fant, the toe issue, might be something he's dealing with for a little while. He's missed most of training camp. He did play the entire game last week. They're going to be continuing to protect players like that. Dre'Mont Jones, Tyler Lockett, the hamstring and thigh injuries. Those don't just magically disappear. They can be good enough that you can play on game day, but these are guys that they are going to continue to err on the side of caution with. And even Reek Woolen, who played every single snap the other day against the Denver Broncos, if he's got even the slightest tightness in his hamstring on Wednesday, then they're going to make sure that he's ready to go. I would not be surprised if a number of these players are full participants in Thursday's practice. The guys like Dre'Mont Jones and Noah Fant, who have been limited up to this point in practice, maybe the Seahawks are fine with that setup moving forward, at least for right now. Hey, we'll get you what reps you need in the individual work. We'll have limitations on team drills, but we'll make sure that you're ready to go. These are veterans that have played a lot of football. So those are players that you can afford to take away some of those practice reps and still think that they're going to be ready once you get to Sunday in Foxboro. But still, it's understandable at this stage of the season, only one game in, to have this long of an injury report. You can understand why fans be concerned. The one that I am a little bit concerned about, that it was made this quickly, the fact that Uchenne Nwosu, they're already saying, is not playing, that means to me he's not close to being ready. Because if he was close to being ready, I think they would be testing out the next few days. Hey, is he going to have a chance to at least maybe get on the practice field? Who knows if he plays this weekend? But the fact that they are already saying, no, he is not going to play, and maybe some of it's the road trip, they might just think it's not a good week to bring him back when they're going cross country. Who knows what's playing into that? But that suggests to me that at the very earliest, week 3, that might not even be necessarily the most optimistic timetable right now if they're already this early in the week, in week 2, ruling him out.
That's a really good point. And that's obviously the concern for the Seahawks and for Seahawks fans everywhere. I also think that some of it is, and I hate to mention the San Francisco 49ers, but, their head coach, suggested that Christian McCaffrey would have, their star running back, Christian McCaffrey, would have been available if it was a playoff game. And instead, they went with the former undrafted free agent Jordan Mason because they recognized it was week 1. And obviously, the 49ers were able to, have that victory against the Green Bay Packers without New York Jets. Sorry, I get my Aaron Rodgers references here mixed up, but without Christian McCaffrey. I think the Seahawks are feeling confident in what they have in Boye Mafe and Derek Hall. And that's one of the reasons why maybe they are exercising extra caution with Uchenne Nwosu. Look, there's no question about it. Uchenne Nwosu is Seattle's best edge defender against the run. You would love to have him in a game like this where the Patriots ran the ball almost twice as many times as they threw the ball, rushed for 170 yards, only threw for 121 yards in their victory against the Cincinnati Bengals a week ago. Uchenne Nwosu is a terrific football player. You want him back as soon as possible. But when he is back, you want him full strength. So I do think that this is something where Seattle is exercising a little bit of caution. I do expect Uchenne Nwosu to have a strong possibility of playing in week 3. But yes, there's no doubt about the fact that Mike McDonald just said right off the bat, Uchenne Nwosu is not yet ready to return to the field. It is definitely a little bit of a reason for concern for the Seahawks.
I do like the point that you just made there, that the depth that the Seahawks now have at that edge rushing position with the way that Boye Mafe and Derek Hall played, the fact that Draymond Jones, look, I know he was limited, but he's going to be ready to go on Sunday. And Travis Gibson is going to be another week into his journey learning all this playbook. And remember, he's only been here for a couple of weeks, so he might be able to give you some more snaps in this game against the Patriots if you ask for that. So, and by the way, Tyus Bowser's now been in the practice squad a couple of weeks. He might be a practice squad elevation candidate this week to reunite with Mike McDonald. There are options for them. So why in week 2 rush Uchenne Nwosu back from a sprained knee if he's at 85%? Get him back fully healthy here in the next week or 2. Don't rush him back. If they had just gotten beat by the Broncos and their edge rushers struggled, or they got ran all over because they couldn't set the edge, then I think you might have a much different situation on your hands. Mike McDonald might be saying, look, I need Uchenne Nwosu back now. Did you see what happened without him? But that is not what played out in week 1, at least. And so the Seahawks have confidence in the group of players that they have can fill in for him. So that is a good point. I do still, at the same time, I think we can both say that, yeah, they may be playing it cautious, but also the fact that they're moving this quickly to say he's out, that would suggest to me that he's just not quite where he needs to be at to even be in consideration to play this weekend, which that might be a little further along in the timeline than a lot of Seahawks fans would have. Nonetheless, an injury report that I would not get too worried about if I'm a Seahawks fan. Look, it's lengthy, but there's a lot of guys in here that were limited. They could very easily be full practice tomorrow. A lot of guys that have been dealing with a few bumps and bruises already along the way, and you're just trying to take care of your players on Wednesday. So tomorrow, that'll be a more telling injury report. If all these guys are still on there, then you start to maybe have some reservations. How physically healthy is this team going to be heading into the road opener? But I would not be hitting the panic button just yet, especially because the Seahawks are going to take care of their players with a physical opponent coming up in the New England Patriots. Speaking of those Patriots, it is Matchup Wednesday, and we are going to be diving into all the key matchups to watch when the Seahawks travel to face the Patriots in Foxboro. We're going to start off with the Seahawks on the offensive side of the football this week. That'll be coming up next on our Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. Bet at everything from Ken Walker III's sleeper MVP odds, Byron Murphy II's Rookie of the Year odds at plus 1,400, or the aforementioned Uchenne when he returns winning Comeback Player of the Year at plus 25,000 odds. Just throw in a $5 bet and you'll get a 3-week free trial of the NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. For your second listen, make sure to check out the new Locked On NFL, which now has 2 shows every day. First, you can check out the madman Tyler Rowland in the morning with a double shot of NFL Espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL twice a day with the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins. Make those 2 your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. It's our favorite day of the week, Matchup Wednesday. Last week, we went with the Seahawks on defense first against the Broncos offense. We're going to switch gears here in week 2 because the New England Patriots, they only scored 16 points last week, but that was enough to go into Cincinnati and get a road upset. And you mentioned this earlier, 170 rushing yards, barely over 120 passing yards. This Patriots offense went old school. It looked almost like a 1970s offensive attack, the way that they were running the football. But Ramondre Stevenson was giving a lot of trouble to the opposing Cincinnati Bengals. So we're going to pay a lot of attention to those Patriots offensive players when we get later into the show. Let's talk Seahawks offense going into this game. And Rob, I know there is still one position group. You and I are under the expectation Ken Walker III is going to be able to play this weekend. We think there's a good chance he plays. But who is starting at right tackle remains a major question mark. And oh, by the way, the New England Patriots have a rising star on the edge in Keon White, who, if you talk to the Cincinnati Bengals, he single-handedly made life difficult for Joe Burrow last week with 2.5 sacks. It feels like that individual matchup right there, White and company going up against whoever's at right tackle, that stands out as a troublesome potential matchup for the Seahawks going into this game.
Yeah, it really does. As we talked about before, Seattle has a concerning injury report. One player that we did not talk about is George Fant, who did not practice for the Seahawks on Wednesday. And so it sounds like it's going to be Stone Forsythe, at least at this point, who is going to be at the right tackle position. I kind of voiced some concerns about Stone Forsythe. One of the things that I have most concerned about is when you're 6'8", the way that Stone Forsythe is, then you are always going to be vulnerable to slightly shorter and very powerful bull rushers. And that is exactly the type of player that Keon White is. As you said, 2.5 sacks in the week 1 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. So he didn't have the advantage of the home crowd. He only had 1 sack a year ago for the New England Patriots. So to me, what that basically says is that this is the Patriots version of Derek Derek Hall or of Boye Mafe, an edge rusher who is about to explode. And a week ago, Corbin, you and I talked about the fact that the Denver Broncos had an up-and-coming pass rusher themselves. And Jonathan Cooper, he led the squad in sacks a year ago. He was the biggest bugaboo for the Seahawks in that week 1 victory over the Broncos, had a couple of sacks himself. So number 99 for the New England Patriots is somebody that not only whoever is starting at right tackle, but also right guard, because at 6'5", 285 pounds, Keon White moves up and down the line of scrimmage. He is very comfortable with his hand in the dirt or as a 2-down pass rusher. He is somebody that the Seahawks have to focus in on. Again, at this point, we're assuming it is going to be Stone Forsythe. That might be the number one matchup, both in the run game and in pass protection. The Seahawks have got to slow down Keon White.
Yeah, there's definitely a concern level there with the height for Stone Forsythe, because even though Keon White, again, as you mentioned, he's 6'5" himself, but this guy is so powerful that when he is able to get underneath the tackle and bull rush, Stone Forsythe has had a lot of issues with that because of the natural leverage problems that he has. This is a matchup that I'm circling, and I'm kind of intrigued to see Josh Uche, their more athletic, twitchy edge rusher, going against Charles Cross. And when if you go back and watch the film this last week, first quarter was a little bit shaky, but the rest of the game, Charles Cross was easily the bright spot for the Seattle Seahawks and their offensive line. You want to see him going up against Uche. He's going to get some reps against Keon White, too. White has moved all over the line. He might even play nose tackle in this game. The guy just moves everywhere. It seems like New England, even with a new coaching staff, throughout the Bill Belichick era, now with Gerard Mayo as the head coach, they always have these massive human beings that can move up and down the line. They can play multiple positions, and now Keon White is that guy. So that is certainly a matchup that, to me, is a concerning one potentially for the Seahawks. Even if George Fant does play in this game, that still feels like one that Keon White could have a major advantage in. As far as the next worthwhile matchup, let's go to the outside. Seahawks receivers against Patriots cornerbacks. And this one truly feels like a toss-up to me, Rob, because Christian Gonzalez, the second-year corner out of Oregon, only got to play 4 games last year, but he's a bigger, longer-arm corner that could potentially have success like Pat Surtain did against DK Metcalf. He might be one of those few corners that has enough size and enough physicality that he is able to match up fairly well with DK Metcalf. And then in the slot, I think Marcus Jones is one of the most underrated slot corners in the NFL. I loved him coming out of Houston, little speedster that also can return punts and kicks, but this guy gets his hands on the football a lot. He's pesky. He'll come up and defend in the run game. I think that he's a better slot corner than Jaquan McMillan, who the Broncos had last week, who actually had a pretty solid game, and I wasn't necessarily knocking him, but Marcus Jones is a darn good football player. And Jonathan Jones, the other outside corner, has some talent as well, and there's some physicality, some press coverage ability to his game. And so I'm really curious to see how this plays out, because DK Metcalf is not happy with the way things went last week statistically. Can he take advantage of Christian Gonzalez when Gonzalez has only played 5 NFL games to this point? Can they get Jackson Smith and Jigba going, because he does have a size advantage going against Marcus Jones? And Jonathan Jones on the other side, is he going to be quick enough to deal with the still spry Tyler Lockett? To me, this is one that could go back and forth either way, which makes it a very exciting matchup.
Yeah, I'm happy that you mentioned this matchup. I think this is a fun one. As you said, with Christian Gonzalez specifically against DK Metcalf, I'm fascinated by that one. Similar to what we talked about a moment ago with Keon White, the Seahawks went with Derek Hall at pick number 37 a couple of years ago, and the Patriots came back 9 picks later with Keon White at number 46 overall. Very similarly, the Seahawks, of course, a year ago went with Devin Witherspoon at number 5, and Christian Gonzalez, a corner that a lot of NFL clubs that I spoke to had as the number 1 corner in that class, fell down the board a little bit into the Patriots' lap. Now, as you mentioned, he only played 4 games a year ago after he suffered a couple of different injuries, but he had an interception. He's long and he is fast. He has terrific change of direction. He's very physical when he is up close and press coverage. And when you're going to be facing a wide receiver as big and strong as DK Metcalf, that really is one of the keys. So I think that this is a fascinating matchup, especially for not only for the Seahawks in terms of trying to win this game in Foxboro, obviously, but also for those of you who are following along in fantasy football. If you selected DK Metcalf early in your fantasy football draft and he didn't produce the numbers that you were hoping for in week one, will he have that bounce back against a second-year player who's basically entering his sixth game as a starter? Again, 4 games last year, and then the 1 game in the victory against the Cincinnati Bengals a week ago. So to me, as you mentioned with the different Jones players who are not related, but just because I want to be say it simply, the Jones brothers at this point, I want to see if Seattle's quicker receivers like JSN, like Tyler Lockett, are able to shake themselves free. And if DK is able to go over the top against a wide receiver who physically, size and speed matches up very well against DK Metcalf, it's going to be critical for Seattle to be able to pass protect, because the New England Patriots have the corners that can be able to run with Seattle's wideouts.
Looking at the last key matchup on offense, it was a quiet week a week ago for the tight ends. Noah Fant had a couple catches for 11 yards. No catches for A.J. Barner, no catches for Brady Russell. Pharaoh Brown obviously was out. He is looking to be trending in the right direction to maybe play against his former team in Foxboro this weekend. But this may be a game where Ryan Grubb, who there were games he game planned his tight ends at Washington. This may be a game where he is putting an extra bullet point or two down in his list. Hey, this could be an area that I can get Noah Fant going. Maybe Pharaoh Brown, if he's healthy, we can get him a couple of touches in the passing game. Because New England, as good as their defense played last week against Cincinnati, the one area the Bengals did have some success was getting their linebackers in coverage, both against tight ends as well as receivers. They a couple times managed to get Jamar Chase on Juwan Bentley, one of their linebackers, and Bentley gave up 7 catches for 62 yards on 7 targets in this game. Coverage is not his strong point. So this feels like an opponent that the intermediate passing game, whether it's getting your tight ends or your running backs on the linebackers, that feels like an area that Ryan Grubb may be able to scheme up some easier completions that can move the chains. And you might even be able to get some stretching the field going if somehow Noah Fant ends up with somebody like Bentley across from him running down the seam. You might be able to stretch the defense out a little bit. This feels like a spot the Seahawks could have a built-in advantage against the Patriots defense.
I 100% agree with you. I think that first off, it's critical that Seattle pass protects. And so if you have to use your tight ends to help chip on the edge, then maybe you keep your tight ends there to help protect Geno Smith. But at the same time, as you mentioned, Bentley struggled in coverage. You look at some of their other linebackers. You mentioned Josh Uche, who will occasionally drop back into coverage. Anthony Jennings is another player who is more of a strong side pass rushing specialist rather than dropping back into coverage. The same with Jelani Tavai, some of the other linebackers that they have on their squad. This is a club that is better attacking the line of scrimmage than they are dropping back into coverage at the linebacker position. They've got 2 terrific safeties in Kyle Duggar and in Jabril Peppers, but at the same time, they usually are playing back. And so this does feel like there is going to be an opportunity in the middle of the defense for Geno Smith to be able to hit Seattle's tight ends or slot receivers or even their running backs, but there should be some openings in the middle. For one of the things I noticed about the way that the Cincinnati Bengals failed in their attempt to start the season 1-0 at home against a Patriots team that frankly isn't as talented as Cincinnati is it felt like their quarterback Joe Burrow got a little bit too aggressive at times. That to me was one of the things that I really was felt good about the way that Geno Smith took what was given to him, whether it be as a scrambler, whether it be in throwing those underneath kind of routes. It feels like he might be able to do the exact same thing in Foxboro this weekend.
When we come back, we're going to switch gears to the Seahawks defense going up against Ramondre Stevenson and a physical Patriots offense. That's coming up next year on Locked On Seahawks. Patience, drive, and passion. It's what brings home the winning trophy and also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Whether it's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, If it's speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your parts are guaranteed to fit your ride or your money. eBay Motors, you're going to be burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to Matchup Wednesday here on Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. It's our favorite episode of the week, Matchup Wednesday. We just broke down the Seahawks on offense against the Patriots' stingy defense. Now going to flip the script. The Patriots offense against the Seahawks defense. Seattle's going to be looking for an encore after an impressive performance against the Denver Broncos. But this is going to be a little bit different offensive attack that the Seahawks are going to be facing in New England. And it all starts with Ramondre Stevenson, the physical downhill bowling ball running back who, according to Pro Football Focus, led all running backs last week with 118 yards after contact. This guy is a broken tackle waiting to happen. He falls forward almost every time he carries the football. It feels like I'm going into this game, especially with the fact that Tyrell Dodson and Jerome Baker were both on the injury report, with Dodson being out today and Baker being limited by a lingering hamstring injury. That becomes a potential concern when you suddenly on Sunday have to come up and try to tackle Ramondre Stevenson 25 times.
Yeah, no question about it. I think that this is one of those games you got to kind of look at your fingernails and start kind of chewing them down a little bit, because Ramondre Stevenson could take over a football game. He just proved that against the Cincinnati Bengals squad a week ago that frankly had greater health of the linebacker position than the Seahawks currently do. As you mentioned, Tyrell Dodson was out for practice on Wednesday, and Jerome Baker was limited as well. Now, these are two veterans. They proved what they were able to do against the Denver Broncos a week ago, especially with Baker being sidelined throughout most of training camp and the preseason. But still, you do have some concerns about that, because your current middle linebacker or backup middle linebacker is Drake Thomas, who hasn't played a lot of football. Now, I personally am confident in what Drake Thomas is able to do. I think that he would be fine in that role. Tyrese Knight is the backup weak side linebacker behind Jerome Baker. So how the rookie would be able to form, again, that's concerning. Clearly, with Tyrell Dodson and Jerome Baker, both previously in the AFC East, Tyrell Dodson with the Buffalo Bills, Jerome Baker with the Miami Dolphins, they're going to have a great deal of familiarity with their former AFC East opponent, Ramondre Stevenson, and the New England Patriots. But still, this is the number one matchup, I think, from the Seahawks defensively, similar to the way that we highlighted Keon White as the player that you have to kind of circle that the Seahawks have to be concerned about. I think on offense against the Patriots, it's absolutely Ramondre Stevenson. They have another very talented back in Antonio Gibson, who is similar size, much faster kind of a guy, but Stevenson bounces off of contact well. You cited the numbers, 118 yards after contact. Corbin, he ran for 120. So that means he basically had 2 yards blocked for him at that point. His ability to slide off of contact, his vision, his burst. He ran a 4.64 in the 40-yard dash. Not an explosive time, but he is quicker than he is fast. So that to me is basically this game in a nutshell. If the Seahawks can slow down New England's running game, much easier said than done. If they can, they're going to win this football game. If they cannot, this could be an ugly game from a Seahawks perspective.
If there is a matchup that could work in Seattle's favor, in large part because of injuries, and maybe could affect Ramondre Stevenson's output as well, look no further than the left side of the offensive line. And before we started this live show, Rob, I actually on social media posted about this. City So, their starting left guard, did not practice today. The second-year player at Eastern Michigan, the guy that you and I both liked coming out of Eastern Michigan. And at left tackle, they've already benched their starter 10 snaps into the game last week against Cincinnati. It looks like they are going to be moving forward with Vidarian Lowe, who gave up 3 pressures and a quarterback hit while playing about 65% of the game last week. if there is an area that the Seahawks, Mike McDonald and company are looking at thinking, hey, let's take advantage of this, let's game plan to take advantage of a left side that could be playing two backups in Vidarian Lowe and Michael Jordan. No, this is not the Michael Jordan that led the NBA in scoring all those years. Two totally different sports. Michael Jordan has been a backup his entire career in the NFL, and there have been struggles for him when he has played. So that could create some major problems for New England just trying to run their offense, especially if Seattle decides to play that side a little bit heavier. All right, let's have Leonard Williams or Byron Murphy over there. Let's get Boye Mafe singled out against Vidarian Lowe or even Derek Hall. Let's use one of our explosive athletes there. This feels like a position group matchup that could very easily go Seattle's way. And if they're able to stop the run and they are able to force New England into situations where they're throwing a lot on 3rd and 6 or longer, Jacoby Brissett is not the most mobile quarterback. He is not a statue, but this is not a guy that's going to run all over the place, especially at this stage of his career. This could be a situation where that side of the line, I could even see Devin Witherspoon coming from the slot over there and trying to make things really interesting where there's immediate pressure. And then Jacoby Brissett gets put in spots where he's trying to force the ball into coverage, which would be a bad recipe against the Seahawks defense. So I'm looking at that area, not just in the run game, but pass rushing as well. It feels like if you have two backups in over there for a Patriots O-line that's already had some struggles throughout the preseason, that could be an area Seattle can feast on.
Absolutely agree with you there. I mean, the Patriots have an offensive line that is young and is having some durability issues already this season. Look, they're two best offensive linemen at this point is the center David Andrews and the right tackle Michael Onwenu. But they have two players on the right side of the field or the right side of the offensive line. The right guard Layden Robinson, who is a rookie from Texas A&M, as well as Caden Wallace, a rookie from Penn State, who has played right tackle as well as an extra tight end. As we talked about earlier, the New England Patriots ran the ball considerably more than they threw the ball. That is going to be their recipe here. And so this really comes down to the fact, or really comes down to the question about whether the Seahawks actually have improved from the 31st ranked run defense that we saw a year ago. Obviously, they were very successful at home against a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix and a kind of a hodgepodge at the running back position for the Denver Broncos. And look, I have a great deal of respect for the talent that the Broncos have at running back, but again, the Patriots are going to be at home. They're going to have a veteran quarterback in Jacoby Brissett, who is not that accurate, is not that athletic, as you mentioned, but he is a functioning starting quarterback, and he's a smart guy. And so if the Seahawks are able to load the box up and slow down the Patriots running game, this really should be a game in which the Seahawks are able to get to an early lead and then be able to just kind of nail this thing home. But if the Patriots are able to stick around, then they will pound Seattle. And we're going to see if Seattle has the bodies, the depth along the defensive line and linebacker to be able to play in this game. So again, I think that New England's offensive line, and you just mentioned the limitations they have at especially along the left side, but even the right side is a little bit green, so to speak. And so I'm curious to see if the Seahawks are able to take advantage of the Patriots' lack of depth, lack of experience, and frankly, lack of athletic ability. But they are people movers, the line of scrimmage. So this is going to be one of those kind of black and blue kind of pound them type of strategies from Alex Van Pelt, the Patriots offensive coordinator. And again, Ramondre Stevenson trying to play the starring role as the basher for the Patriots.
Real quick, we got one more match to cover here. In New England, they've made some additions at receiver. This is not a team that's got a lot of star power out there. We obviously know Jalen Polk, the rookie out of Washington that played for Ryan Grubb. They added Osborne, formerly from the Minnesota Vikings. There are some intriguing pieces, but Seattle in the past, under Pete Carroll, they had so many issues defending tight ends. Denver didn't get much done with their tight ends last week. New England's got Hunter Henry, who is still a top 10 tight end in this league. Austin Hooper, who's bounced around a little bit, but can do some damage in the passing game, had 31 receiving yards last week for New England. They're not going to be throwing the ball 50 times a game. That's just not the way they play things out. But those tight ends, those quick check downs, the chain movers, that's where Jacoby Brissett is going to be leaning And that's why they're going to be hoping for third and short opportunities to throw the football. And they don't have a lot of those third and longs where they have to try to really rely on their receiving core. And that puts the ball in the court for the safeties in particular, Rayshon Jenkins, Julian Love, Kayvon Wallace going up against Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, two tight ends that can stretch the field, can create after the catch. And so that is going to be the matchup from a pass catching standpoint that Seattle's going to need to find a way to win in order to secure this game.
Yeah, no question about it. And I feel confident about what we saw in week one, what Seattle safeties, the three-headed monster that it is able to do. So I feel confident about that. But as we talked about before, the concern is at the linebacker position, because those linebackers are asked to cover a lot as well, especially at the weak side linebacker in Jerome Baker. If Seattle's veteran linebackers are not able to play in this game, you know that Drake Thomas and Tyrese Knight are going to be attacking the line of scrimmage and run support. And Jacoby Brissett being the veteran quarterback that he is, it makes an awful lot of sense to do a little bit of play action and just throw passes right over the top for those little 5-7 yard completions that are going to be able to kind of allow New England to work their way down the field. So that's why whoever is at linebacker for the Seahawks, they have got to be able to play the run, but also not give up opportunities right over the top.
As always, you can follow me on X and Threads at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, I'll be teaming up with Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots as we continue to take a deeper dive into Sunday's Week 2 matchup in Foxboro. We'll have our predictions, keys to victory, key storylines, you name it, all kinds of good stuff coming out tomorrow on that crossover, which will be coming out early in the morning. Seahawks, Patriots. Make sure that you're listening in. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Go Hawks.